reward those of you here on time, and the folks who are late will come in when they come in, and we'll greet them too. I'm Brian Krill. I'm the new executive director of the Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club. I'm really excited to be here. It's been a great few months. I got here in early July, these types of opportunities are something that I'm as excited about as anything here in Steamboat. To see the level of engagement of parents and the whole community, and some of the things we'll talk about tonight about really how we harness that and implement that throughout our programs. It really does truly start with just you guys being here, continuing to develop the healthiest sport culture we can here at Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club. John Moulton is here, our Chief Operating Officer. Dave Stewart, Athletic Director. Gene Makowski is our Communications and Marketing Director, and we're going to kind of roll through an agenda we have set up for you tonight. That's what's in store for you. But we put this under the banner of club. This is the programmatic leadership of this club. Extensive backgrounds in coaching and education, so we thought tonight we should really start with that. What from our perspective as leaders is the philosophy of this club, and how do we put that into action? More importantly, how do we put that into action? The few things I'm going to talk about are really sort of big picture. My job is to, and I might reference some things that I've heard over the years that people make assumptions about the culture or the intentions of an organization like this. I've heard it for 30 years, and I've heard it here in the last 3 months. Sort of things that people say, oh, well, the club is this or the club is that, or it's my job and it's the job of our leadership to say the Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club adheres to these philosophies. That drives everything we do. And it's my job to make sure that's true, and that everything we do has to do with everything we do, where every dollar goes, how we hire coaches, how we train coaches, how we communicate with parents, that we tell, that at our trainings like this, that what we say here tonight is what you experience out on the snow with your kids, and continuing to work on that and really make sure that when I hear things that aren't what we intend as an organization, that we can address it and say, actually, that's we can talk about that. Let's discuss that. But this is really how we're doing things, what we're intending, how we're trying to do them, why we're trying to do them that way. And it's a big, complex organization. We serve almost 1,300 kids from age 4 or 3 if you lie about it, all the way up to 20-year-olds, right, and postgraduate athletes. And we have some 275 staff and volunteers that help implement those programs. So it's a monster, but it starts with this. It starts with what do we intend as an organization to achieve, and how do we intend to achieve it. I'm not going to go into this tonight. It's not really the topic of tonight, but we do have a rich history here, and Steamboat is one of the places that you can do competitive snow sports at a level that is unparalleled at most places in the world. Period. End of story, full stop, right? Like that is over 100-year history, and with the venues of Howelson and a major destination resort both, and the commitment that this community has had to these sports over the years, there's just not many places in the world, including some of our counterparts even in this state or in this country, that have this level of commitment and community development around skiing and families and youth as consistently as we do here in Steamboat. So with the legacy of Steamboat and skiing and snowboarding in Steamboat, it's also an invitation to you as parents to be a part of that. That's part of what you get out of being involved here. Not only do the kids get to be involved, but what's your story and all that? What brought you to skiing? Raise your hand if you think you're a better person because you were introduced to skiing at some point in your life. All right, there you have it. Like, we're all there, and we get to do that at an amazingly high and community-oriented level here in Steamboat Spring. That's our legacy, as much as anything. As much as the flags on the ceiling, that's the legacy, and the legacy that all of you just raised your hand. That's the legacy. I'm classic. I'm not going to talk about these things, and then I'll go on for several minutes talking about these things. Usually we start with, right, this is our mission, these are our values. Absolutely, we are going to start there. That is the background of everything that we do. But I'm gonna kind of breeze past that for tonight, because I think that starts to fall kind of on, like, yeah, our mission, our values, and cue up a little bit more of what the rest of the team is going to be talking about, like, what does that mission and values, how does that translate into the overarching culture that we're trying to achieve as a club? And then how are we implementing that culture, which is more what the rest of the team will get into. But this paradigm of culture of sport, culture of training, and culture of performance is something I need to give credit to Brian Fish, who's the development director for US Nordic. So he works with all the athletes kind of making that jump from clubs like ours to the national team. And he's worked in that role or similar roles over the last, 15 years probably. Fish has been involved. And what an incredible story the USA Nordic team has been these last 10 years or so. And so I'm going to credit the fact that this model is something that he's talked about, because everybody's asked literally around the world, like, what is the US Nordic team doing that all of a sudden they're competing at a level we've never competed at before internationally, and they're having fun. Nordic skiing at that level is not fun. Right, Dave? It is not fun. So the international community in terms of culture is literally for the last many years saying, like, how are they doing that? How do they have a family atmosphere, a fun atmosphere? They're posting videos of themselves dancing and having fun at international level Nordic meets. The Russians are not quite looking that way, and some of the other teams, they're trying to figure this out. So this is credit to him, and this culture of sport, culture of training, culture of performance. I'm not going to talk about the US Nordic team anymore, but know that that's kind of its background, and that the answer to what did you guys do, the answer was this, it wasn't that over a couple years we tweaked our training regimen and that's what did it. Or it was like we took a 10 to 15 year approach to completely change the culture of the US Nordic team. And it started with the most basic culture of sport, a foundation where we just recommitted to our love of the sport, our love of being together, our love of traveling together and living out of suitcases all winter long in Europe. Like, we had to lay a groundwork of that before we could go to training and performance. And so I want to use that as a model for, again, my description of how all of this has to fit together in a big, complex organization. And so it also, you're going to hear more from the team here about very specific, age-appropriate training designs and really how our programs are designed. And that's sort of this sport for life model, but this training of sort of culture of sport, culture of training, culture of performance really kind of encapsulates all of that. Our mission, our values, as well as these other international models of sport development and sport for life. So, whoops. So when we talk about culture of sport, That is the base and the broadest definition of involvement in the club here. So raise your hand if you're a member of the culture of sport here at Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club. Everybody's hand should, right? You're here. Your kids are in the programs. You're shuffling. You're hopefully skiing yourself, or you're a fan of skiing. So the culture of sport is that absolute base passion for the fact that we want to be involved with activities in the outdoors, that we all get to be a part of it, all of our supporters, our partners, Winter Carnival, every event, every kid. That's the culture of sport. Learning the history of steamboat, skiing and steamboat, knowing what's happening at the World Cup if you're so interested. Introducing your kids to the fact that this is an international sport. Understanding what these flags on the ceiling is. All of that is the culture of sport. We have a lot of competition in this country for our culture of sport, right? How much focus in this country goes to skiing? Not much. NFL, NCAA, all of the traditional sports get most of our sport culture is built around the sports that we are not a part of. Here at Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club, our culture is the sport of skiing and snowboarding. And so we need to really be intentional about that and continue to grow that base. Not necessarily in aggregate numbers of kids. We want to introduce every kid to skiing. But we want to introduce them to skiing in the culture of sport that also is part of a competitive sports program. That we want to introduce people to sport, to be involved for many, many, many years, if not generations, of involvement here in Steamboat with skiing and snowboarding. We can say that here, unlike most places in the world around this sport. Skiing is our national sport here in Steamboat, right? And we want to be proud of that. We want to continue to develop that. That is the base of everything we do. How many kids will perform at the highest level after 15 years of training if all the things I mentioned don't exist? It won't happen. How many kids will want to do it for more than a couple seasons if all the things I mentioned don't exist? It won't happen. How many families will want to schlep gear back and forth between multiple venues for multiple years and pay fees and all that if we don't have that just core base of, we love doing this? That's culture of sport, and that's the base of everything that we do here. So again, as I hear over the years, the club's just there because of the flags and the Olympians and the best performers and the podiums. No. The base of all of that is the love we all have and the commitment and involvement we all get to participate in this great sport. And we can do it bigger and better here than most places in the world. So that we can't move on to training, or another better word for training is practice, right? And one of our commitments to you as parents is that I think as parents, any of us want to simply introduce the concept to our kids that if you love something and want to get better at it, here's what you do, right? Does that hold true for parenting itself, or marriages, or being a doctor, or a lawyer, or like that's it, right? Like, I really am interested in this. In order to get better at it, I need to practice it and systematize my approach to it in some way. That's the culture of training. And it's that simple in the sense that that's just that next step of, we all love the sport, but now what are we going to do about that? And that's not anything about how good this kid is or that kid is, or what their long-term potential is. And that should not be the focus, because we don't know any of that until they train and try to get better at it over multiple years, right? And that's what they all have in common. So when we map out all these age-appropriate training regimens, right, it's about the culture of training that's just as important, if not more important than anything else. That we're teaching kids to want to get better at something they love. And deliberately practice it over time. Fair enough? And that's something we can all participate in, so that further builds the base of our love of sport and our culture of sport. And I will, that picture didn't show up. Culture of performance. What is a culture of performance? I'll let you guys answer this one. How do we represent a culture of performance at Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club? Results such as? Race results, absolutely. Is that performance? Absolutely. Are we going to celebrate podiums and Olympians and kids that win competitions? Absolutely. That's putting it on the line that day in that place and performing.
It could be bigger than that, though. It could be the celebration of goals themselves, right? And as much as I believe in exceptionalism and trying to raise those up that want it and win, any kid that goes out there that sets meaningful goals and achieves those goals is at the pinnacle of performance, because then they can carry that over the rest of their lives as well, I would imagine, right, as part of that. You know, as much as the gold medal is important.
Bingo. In this model, absolutely. Performance incorporates, I train at my highest capacity every day. I have for many, many years. I'm reaching the highest level that I possibly can without any question with the venues and coaches and commitment I've done, and I have performed at the highest level possible. That, for some of our kids, a culture of performance is, did you bring your goggles today? Right? That is performing, right? And if you don't perform there, you're not going to perform at podiums and results and whatever down the road. So a culture of performance is not just results. It is the bigger things that you spoke to. And brevity is not my strong suit. Oh, I forgot that talk. Is there a possibility that this would refresh and bring up? What's that? I was not editing this 5 minutes before this started. Where? There we go.
There we go.
All right.
I need a refresher.
So again, culture performance is, this picture on the left is in the culture of everything I've just talked about. That picture on the left is just as important in terms of performance as the picture on the right. And they lead to one another, right? That kid's got to love the sport and want to get better and want to do this sport for 15 years with the level of intensity and commitment that they're capable of, and then they may have their day on the podium. But it's performance all the way through. It's not just the top of the pinnacle or the top of the pyramid and it's just the results. It's the whole process, and that is performance. So if we're doing this right, which I intend, and I think everyone here working here intends to do, the idea with this is, it's actually, I don't even love the pyramid. It's not necessarily that one leads to the next, but it is, if we're doing it right, it is a progression, but it's all working together. Our performance better reflects the results of a well-executed training plan, which these guys will talk about, and it feeds back to a culture of sport that we all celebrate our successes, victories, failures, challenges, all together. That it's not just the Olympians on the wall, it's all of us that get to celebrate that because of this, base of culture and philosophy that we're adhered to all the way through. So that's the framework that I'm working from in terms of making sure that everything that we're implementing in terms of our programming and strategies here at the club, that we can speak to this being the right and healthiest culture possible, to have as many kids involved as possible that want to do this, and for those that have the opportunity to reach the highest levels of competition at an international level, that we are, if that's not happening in Steamboat, where is it happening, right? With everything that the kids have available to them, and what we try to give them through your support, our support, and all the things that we plan for, we should have success at every level, in every way that we've defined it, through character development, results, soup to nuts. That's the definition of success, to me, is adhering to this culture all the way through the club. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who's going to talk a little more specifically about how our programs are designed.
Thanks, Brian. And I'm going to stay just briefly at the 30,000 foot level. I think it's important, like that foundation is so important in everything that we do. Like why sport? Like why are we doing this, right? And this is something that I like to look back to, and it's called, just the big picture is captured really well by this document that was created by the Norwegian Olympic Federation called Children's Rights in Sports, right? And it's trying to make sure that sports is athlete-centered, is kid-centered, is for the individual, and is not for skewed toward professional sport or what the parents want or even what organizations want, right? And the first thing here is safety and security. That captures the most fundamental things like safe sport, a safe training environment that we provide to kids, and the injury support we provide at the older levels. That is our number one concern. That's our number one priority in our programs, is the safety of all the kids, all the athletes in our programs. Friendship and well-being, teaching fair play, integrity, that's reflected in our values. That is a super high priority. Nothing that we're doing should compromise the integrity of who we are, and should teach those lessons of fair play. Based on the children's needs, this again comes back to having to be really athlete-centered. That what is provided at each age level is appropriate for that developmental age of the kid. So we're not providing a 6-year-old with training that's appropriate for a 14-year-old because it'll make them a faster 7-year-old, right? We're giving the 6-year-old what's right for a 6-year-old. We're giving the 8-year-old what's the right training for an 8-year-old, and that serves that individual the best way possible for their long-term development. A really important concept is mastery. That every athlete should have be given the opportunity to develop skills and become an expert in that. And I think that shows up in the results on the page in competition, but also it's a skill that you take into every walk of life. That ability to master something, it develops confidence. You learn how to become expert at something, and that obviously carries over into every aspect of someone's life. Influence, this is a big one for me. That the kids have an opportunity, that children, athletes have an opportunity to choose what they're participating in. Something that's really unique here in the club is that we have so many sports, right? And we really advocate for broad sports sampling. It's not just it's just alpine here, it's all you can do, right? No, you can try jumping, cross country, snowboard, and all these different sports so that the kids feel that they've had autonomy and that they're doing that sport because it's what they developed a passion for. I chose to do this. It's not just the only option in town. And I think that is really important for lifelong participation, that you make that choice to participate. And at what level you participate. We have competitive programs and participatory programs, which we have into the middle school and high school programs. So something for almost anybody to provide a sport experience for as many people as possible. I think that's also captured in a free to choose which sport they want to do. Also providing opportunity for kids to do different sports in the off-season. That's captured in this. We have a robust summer program with mountain biking and trampoline and skateboarding, but kids can play soccer in the spring and they can do other sports in the fall and volleyball. We don't try to hog the whole year with training until it's the right time. And then competitions for everyone. I think that, you know, this is the idea of providing the right competitions at the right time, and that athletes choose. You don't have to go and compete in everything. You can kind of keep it going and give it a try with Stevo Cups here in town, and then as you develop a passion for it, become more and more interested in that and expand your competitive opportunities to out of town and higher level competition. So I like to pull things back to our core values. We worked on these core values, like we sat down in a room a few years ago, you know, and drafted these with all of our lead coaches and sport program directors. And we wanted to have these be real, and I think that this helps to define like what we're all about here. And it's about these athlete-centered outcomes. It's not about what I want. It's not about what the coach wants. Frankly, in a lot of ways, it's not about what the parents want. It's about what's the best for that individual child athlete and their development. And our core values are fun, integrity, teamwork, and achieve. Fun, you know, can be defined in lots of ways. It can be silly fun, but it can also be rewarding, meaningful activities, right? It can be joy in sport. So our goal with fun is developing a lifelong enjoyment of snow sport, exercise, and the outdoors. I almost can't think of something more important from my perspective for someone to have, right? It's like that, the benefits of that in someone's like development as a human are just tremendous, right? Like from a public health perspective, right? Integrity, through sport, you learn about rules. You learn about doing the right thing. You learn about the importance of really just following the rules and playing your sport clean. That carries on into every walk of life. Teamwork, you know, a positive team is part of a high-performance culture. It makes you better. It makes your team much better. It can be applied to marriage. It can be applied to a corporate setting, to educational settings. Learning how to become an outstanding team member, a contributing team member, a mentor is such a valuable skill. We try to teach that through our programs. And achieve is probably the most noticeable one in a lot of ways, that performance aspect. But I think, and I'll talk about this more, trying to focus more on the skill development, the learning side of achievement, the ability to set goals, to challenge oneself. That's a skill in itself. That's such an important skill that's carried over from sport into any walk of life. So this concept of long-term athlete development, and it's an important one, and I think that you can interchange the athlete for a person. I think it's not just talking about the on-the-snow aspect of performance and development. We're talking about developing whole people. That's this champions on and off the snow concept, but just to define it, long-term athlete development is athlete-centered, coach-led, and organization-supported. That's us planning for both elite performance and lifelong participation. It's about achieving the very highest goals, becoming an Olympian, but it's also about being a lifelong participant, developing those skills that apply outside of sport. It's based on where that kid's at in that moment, based on their physical, mental, emotional, cognitive development. It has at its foundation is physical literacy to do any sport, and it provides that training that matches that athlete where they're at based on their biological age, their training age, in order to have them develop optimally for where they are. Whether you're new to town and are new to the sport, or you grew up here and you've been doing it since you were 2 and your parents came up through the club as well, right? We have our goal is to provide the right training for all those people. So, kind of in short, the right training at the right time, the right amount, with the right coach, in the right environment, with the right equipment, based on evidence. We're not just making this stuff up. We're looking for research on this and best practices that we can apply to our programs. So we look to do that in all of our programs, whether it's U8 skiing and they're 2 days a week, or it's FIS Alpine and they're training year-round up to 6 days a week and training all summer, right? Those are different programs, but we're looking to apply this filter across all of them. So just a little bit deeper dive into what that looks like. I'm using the same image on the right that Ryan used, and the reason it's a really good one. So Canada has probably the most built out long-term athlete development model of any country. And Brian Fish took it from the Canadians. That's why that's where they're built on. It's really good.
I actually took it from your slide.
Yeah, right. So that's good. So that's good. So, but I think, and this is, we're so diverse that I don't want to get just into what just Alpine or just snowboard does, but this is generally how we apply it across all of our programs at different ages, right? So it starts with the active start, fundamentals, learn to train, train to compete, train to win. That's the highest competitive level. But then you see over on the right side the important, that competitive for life, fit for life, active for life. That's just as important to us as the train to win, as the pinnacle, right? So I like this one better because instead of being a pyramid, it keeps all the kids in it, right? We're not narrowing it down. If those kids who don't choose to continue on to the train to compete or the train to win stage, they still have sport as the foundation of a part of their health and life, which I think is extremely important. But you can read it too, but just to go through that age 3 to 6, the focus is on fun, just engagement, physical literacy, sports sampling, trying a lot of different sports. My son's 6, does a lot of different sports. I have no idea what he's going to do. Maybe it's video gaming. I don't know. Right now, it's just stopping on his bike as fast as he can. You know, that type of thing. But just trying a lot of different sports during that time. It's very important. That's when you map a lot of your movement patterns at that age. So it's important to try a lot of, to sample a lot of sports and do a wide variety of sport activities. Next from that, it's age 6 to 9. So this is the U10 Alpine, cross country, board riders and snowboard phase through this time. This is the fundamental skill development, right? So still a big focus on developing a passion for the sport, on keeping it fun, but introducing some real skill development. And then also trying a competition or two during the season, right? For us here in Steamboat, that's often Steamboat Cups, which are local competitions with almost, no entry fee, part of the program, part of the training plan. You don't have to go to Breckenridge to do your first competition, have a lot of pressure on the kids. Just keeping it fun, but trying out some competition at this stage. From there, it becomes more about training, right? The focus is not yet on competition, right? It's moving from developing a passion for the sport to developing a passion for training. And the work it's going to take to develop and toward the goals in that sport. So at this age, starting to train a little bit more focus on the sport, but introduction to training concepts, introducing some strength training. We have Fun Fit and Fundamentals of Strength Conditioning in the summer for all of our programs here that we offer for all sports. That next step, and then it's the train to train, age 12 to 16. And that's where we start to introduce periodization, mental skills, working with our mindset performance coach, Luke Brosterhouse, and his program. And also, this is where some specialization starts to come into play, right? Up through this point, it's like play as many sports as you want to, right? But this is where the level of commitment to the snow sport of choice becomes so great in order to progress towards the highest level, that it's going to be hard to play 6 different sports, right? Playing a couple different sports in the off season is optimal. That's not the second best option. This is 12 to 16 is not the time to just ski or just snowboard. They should be mountain biking or playing soccer or doing another complementary sport in the off season as well. Okay, but in the winter, the focus becomes snow sports. Okay. And then it's really only at age 16 that best practices show to focus on just one primary sport, right? You can still play another sport as well, but you're not letting that second sport get in the way of your progression towards your snow sport of choice, ideally, right? So it's that age group where you start to have comprehensive year-round training in the snow sport of choice. So a lot of time in our gym over here with Sadie and Jeff, and your snow sport coaches as well in that programming. Some time on snow in the summer is common there. A lot more dryland conditioning training becomes really fundamental to progression. You can't do it. You can't progress beyond this level without spending a lot of time in the spring, summer, fall in your sport. And then beyond this, age 16 plus is the train to win. When you're looking out, this is at the collegiate level, at the national team level, at the international level in our sports, where your focus is on maximizing performance and results. But it doesn't happen till then. I think this is the important takeaway from this, from a performance perspective, is that the focus on results and performance as the primary focus of activity in sport should not happen until this train to win phase, after they've gone through 10 years of the sport. If you do, you're just limiting the progression that you can have in the sport, okay? And then beyond that is the active for life. This is really important to me, that after you participate in sport, and it's one of the reasons I'm really passionate about our sports, is that they're all lifelong sports, right? There are many sports that are really popular in our country that are difficult to continue to play for your whole life. It's tough to play football when you're 50, right? But you can ski, right? You can snowboard, right? I think there's something about them. You can mountain bike, you know? So the opportunity that we're introducing the kids in our club to sports that they can continue for their whole life is really meaningful to me, because I think it does contribute to a healthy life. So this slide really just goes over again the phases of long-term athlete development by biological age and also training age. So training age is the number of years you've done the sport, like actively been in training in that sport. So biological age is your where you are in relation to puberty. Chronological age is your 44, and then that training age is if you're new to town and you haven't been skiing all winter for in a training program, your training age might only be 1 or 2, even though you're 10, right? That needs to be taken into consideration. That might involve being in a different program. If you're 10, you might be a new 10 to make sure you get a good start. So we're looking at those specifically. Okay, trying to get some takeaways for parents. So a couple key things. Early engagement in sport, that's the sport sampling, starting skiing, snowboarding early, but not specializing in early. Does that make sense, a distinction, right? So we're ski jumping in the winter, but we're still doing 4 sports the rest of the year. That's optimal, right? That focus on one sport should only happen after age 16. Sampling a wide variety of sports. It's not hard in Steamboat, right? We're kind of a sport crazy town. Mountain biking, soccer, swimming, volleyball. The kids in the Winter Sports Club should be doing that range of sports. We also have tremendous opportunity to provide a wide range of sports sampling opportunities right here in the club in the winter, which is very unique here, that you can do ski jumping, you can do skiing and ski mountaineering at the same time. You can do alpine and jumping. And this winter is long here, so the opportunity to do some sports sampling during the 5 months of winter is really important for optimal progression, no matter what path you choose, even if it's not a snow sport. That diverse sport participation, I'm talking a lot about this progression to the highest level, but it's also the best for just personal development. The skills you learn from learning new skills over and over again apply elsewhere outside of sport. And then this concept of multilateral development, it just teaches that physical literacy. Again, that applies whether they choose to play baseball or they apply the skills of learning a new sport, learning new skill to their academics, to their work life, to the personal life. It's very valuable. Okay, got a couple more slides. This one's really important to me, and this is the one that I work on a lot when I'm thinking about our programs and when we're making choices about program design, is that we look always for the win-wins, right? We're not looking for programs that just develop the highest level athlete, and we're also not designing programs that just are focused on personal development. We're looking for the decisions and the programs that combine them both. And there are a lot of things that do this. For the most part, we can find those. So we're trying to erase any negative outcomes, right, from our programming, where people are asked to focus, specialize too early. That can lead to higher performance early on, right? If you're 8 and you ski every day of the week, you're going to beat kids who are skiing 3 days a week, but they're going to progress better because they have a more balanced foundation, sport foundation. By the time you're 18, they're going to be at a higher level if they're following these practices, okay? So we're not taking shortcuts. We're balancing and trying to look for all the opportunities we can in our programs to develop personal growth and progression towards the highest level. Examples of that are this concept of doing hard things. You know, we had a great presentation from a sports scientist a couple weeks ago on finding the challenge point and finding it's different for every kid, but finding that point where athletes are really challenged, where they're only succeeding 70 or 85% of the time and they're failing the other time, that's where you're learning the most. That's not maintenance, where you're bored. That's not setting the challenge point so high that you're failing all the time and not progressing. That's looking for that challenge point where you're constantly challenged and learning and progressing at the optimal rate. Another piece of this is that we focus on a lot is the environment, that the training environment is the best teacher. That's fun. It's fun to have a really fun, Cedar does a great job of this, it's fun to have a really challenging environment. It's also the most important thing in skill development, having the right course, having the right snow conditions to train. Team culture is another great example. There's so many examples out there of where a really positive team culture leads to the best outcomes from a performance perspective. And learning how to develop a team culture is just good for people, right? It's fun to be part of a great team. You take those skills of how to foster a great team culture into anything else you do. That's that champion, on and off and on. Okay, this is I have 2 more slides. You can't even see, there's supposed to be a kind of a straight line through here that's yellow that you can't see on this. But I want you to consider that line to be the development of an athlete. So it's time to bottom, performance on the top, right? And I think sometimes people think that it should be smooth, right? You start doing a sport and you just get better and better and better and progress to the end point, right? And achieve victory. Sometimes it looks like that. Sometimes athletes just keep getting better without any bumps in the road, but it's the exception, not the norm, right? The norm is to have periods of rapid growth and progression and periods where you don't get better at all or where you take a step backwards, right? And as parents, I think it's really important to understand that and not get too worried about those times. Understand them and help your child athlete through those, but understand that it's natural to have periods, especially young, they're getting better so fast. Every year they get faster, they're getting bigger, they're getting stronger. And then you hit puberty and wow, things change a lot and we're not as fast all of a sudden, right? And that's not, you need to understand, they need to understand that that's natural and that athlete can still rise back up and continue to progress on a great pathway towards their goals. Okay, that's my son, Oscar. He's 4 in that picture, but I had to include him here. So that's out here on house and during the S'more family fun. He's just skiing up and down over and over again, just having a blast, right? It's like just loving it. And this is a concept I think that when I read this, it meant a lot to me, and I think it's a great takeaway for parenting, not just in sport, but across any parenting environment, is that the fundamental human skill is our ability to learn and develop. So no matter what level your kid's at, they have the capacity to get better. They have the capacity to develop skills. It's something that's so unique about humans relative to other animals, other species, that we can learn and improve. So, and that improvement, in my experience, in my own personal experience and in my coaching experience, is what's the most rewarding. So whether you're starting here or starting here, that capacity to develop skills, to learn, to improve, is what's so unique, and that anyone can take advantage of that opportunity. And our role is to develop the right challenge point, the right plan programming, the purposeful practice and feedback from our coaches that allows athletes to maximize their progression and achieve their goals. And John actually shared this great quote just yesterday about where the focus is from Dan Coyle. Too many kids and parents judge their progress by the scoreboard instead of by the amount they've learned. Victories are their own reward. They do not need any extra emphasis. So the result sheet the kids are already focused on the result sheet. Far more than they need to be. That's out there all the time. The kids are talking on the van ride home. As parents, as coaches, our focus should be, what did you learn today? Right? What did you learn this year? What are you trying to learn at practice today? And that is something that you can always excel. So that's what I have. Let's turn it over to John. Thanks.
All right. That's a good one right there. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is training for parents. You probably didn't know you were in a training session today, but thank you, because we all have a role. One of the things that maybe you didn't know about us is we're all parents. Dave's just starting on a sport parent journey. Brian, long ago, graduated as a ski racer, long ago. And my kids both just graduated from high school. Gene's almost there. So, but we all started in this world before our kids were parents in this. So I appreciate you coming as parents into this. Just kind of dovetail on this, and I do want to acknowledge Blair Seymour, who's going to be here tonight. She's our Director of People and Sport. She knows the basis of our programs better than anybody in there. Is a great resource. I'm really bummed that she couldn't come tonight. But she wanted to share this slide, which dovetails with what Dave talked about, where we're trying to get with your kids, and just so that you understand that there's a bit of a struggle in there. We try not to spend too much time in the comfort zone with the kids. We want to spend more time in the growth zone, and this, you can hardly read it, this is the learning zone. We've got to push into that learning and growth zone in there, and before they can get there, we're probably getting into a fear zone. And each of your kids has a little different tolerance for what that fear zone feels like. And when our coaches are pushing them in that direction, they may have some struggle, maybe a time where they're challenged. They come home and it wasn't a great day, or that was really difficult. We've got to get them through that fear zone. If they spend weeks on end in a zone where they're struggling, that's not normal, that's not good, that's not what we want. That's a time for you as parents to act. But if it happens once or twice, help them through it. Understand this is a part of that learning. This is a part of that learning curve that Dave just shared. Because we really want to get to that growth zone if we can. It's uncomfortable for some kids. We're trying to get your kids out of the comfort zone in a safe way, which is difficult. That's why we really do a lot of training with our coaches in skiing and snowboarding, so they can do that safely. It's not like we're taking your 8-year-old and putting them off the big jump out there first time they're on skis. That's not how we get through the fear zone. But that's an important way that we go through things. I want to, Gene, I want you to help me here. Okay. And thought it would be good to talk through a little bit of the common myths that are out there. And I've got a timer set on this in the interest of everybody's time here, so that we don't go too long. But these are common things that Gene and I have both seen and heard out there in the many days that we've spent on the side of a competition arena or at the bottom of a training session while parents are waiting for the kids to come home. Hopefully this is a good way to wrap up kind of some of the things that I've talked about and give you some practical things that you really encounter to find it helpful. So, Gene, help me out.
John?
Yes.
So I have a child that's really good at their sport, and I really feel like they need specialized training. They should be doing nothing but the one sport and training gates all the time.
Yes. So the good sport, the good athlete in there. We've got a philosophy at the Winter Sports Club that is a bit different than other places that you see because we've got such a unique environment here. We've got all these different training arenas in one place. You don't have jumps, a terrain park, a race course, a mogul lane, and cross-country trails all the same place anywhere in the country. That's our secret weapon. So we naturally will mix up that training for that athlete to help provide them with a really good base. And Brian doesn't like pyramids, but I think pyramids really can illustrate well how we're trying to develop athletes with that approach. And when I think of that specialized approach where a kid, they say, hey, I want to be a racer. So let's try to put them in race courses every single day from the minute they're 8 years old and on up. To me, that's like, I want to build a really big pyramid. And if I'm building this pyramid right here, and every single day I'm putting blocks on this pyramid and starting to move up, this pyramid is looking pretty darn good, while these pyramid builders back here are still at the ground level. And I'm starting to get higher and higher, and when they're still working on the ground level, this pyramid looks pretty darn big when I'm all said and done. That's specializing real early. And this athlete looks great right now. But then I keep putting blocks on the top of this pyramid to make it go bigger, and what happens to those blocks? It doesn't get higher. They fall down to the bottom, and you've got this big pile of rubble, and your pyramid's not getting any higher. We don't want to do that to any of your kids. So when you think about that specialization proposition, we're trying to make these big pyramids back here, and we spend a lot of time at the Winter Sports Club through our U10 programs, really making a bigger base, where some other places are running more gates, or running more mobile courses, or spending more time specifically in terrain park elements to do that. That's why our jumpers might jump on cross-country skis instead of just on their jump skis, because it's way harder to go on cross-country. It shakes that up. We're developing that pyramid to a bigger degree. So sorry, that's not what we do here.
Well,
Tell us the right time.
you know, my son though, if you don't want him to do specialized training, he's really good at skiing. I just said that, and so I really think he needs to be in a higher level group. I mean, I know he's supposed to be in the U8 program, but he should be skiing with U10s, maybe even U12s, because he's so good.
Well, Gene, our door's not closed to those situations, but I really want our coaches to chime in on this. And we look at a more holistic. One of the really good slides that Dave put up there on the core values and looking at teamwork is that role that an athlete can play as a mentor and an example, and how they work with their peers. Our kids might be really good, but their classmates are in this group. Even if they are more advanced, they can have a different role with how they play. One of the other things too, oh, there we go. One of the things I see a lot is, yeah, my kid is better because here are two girls that are the exact same age. So this girl probably is faster, right? Would you guess? At 13 years old? Yeah, she is. Is it because she's more skilled? Not necessarily. In fact, for this athlete, they might be faster. It's hard for them to keep up with the others in the skill competition. We want to work with both because both of these athletes can be successful. I guess my point is, Gene, that it's more than just maybe that result of where your kid is. There are a lot of other things that we're looking at. We can have the conversation, but most of the time, staying in that peer group, in our approach with the team and the culture that Brian talked about, is going to be a great fit, and we're really mindful of helping your kid through that.
Okay, well, but here's the thing. My daughter really wants to do more competitions. You know, I feel like if she's competing all the time, that's really the way she's going to get better.
When you get to the choice where there's a lot of competitions, at the younger ages we talked about, it's local. You start to get to a level where you start to travel to competitions, and at higher levels, then there become a lot of choices. One of the things that kicks in, this is a natural instinct for us as parents, it's called FOMO. Anybody know what FOMO is?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. FOMO is a really dangerous thing for us and our kids for sport. And a lot of times that's what directs this. You want to go to a lot of competitions because Johnny just went to that competition and got this great result, and I feel like we really missed out because Johnny got this great result and I was back here. I don't want to ever have that happen again. But this is how I look at things when it comes to competition. Kind of pyramids. But I think of the dartboard principle. And what I'm trying to do in my approach through training sport is when I go to a competition, that's a day of training that I'm missing most of the time. When kids go to a competition, they usually are skiing and snowboarding less on that day. Not always, but usually they're skiing quite a bit less on that day than they are at a training session with us. So they're losing training time when they go to a competition. That's not good. That's, for the long run, that's not what I'm looking for. So, we're trying to hit the bullseye with a couple of good results. Well, I can either give you a whole bunch of darts to throw at a dartboard, and the dartboard's on that wall, and I've got to throw all those darts from back here. Well, if I train a bunch, every day I get closer and closer to that dartboard through my training. So would I be better off trying to get 6 bullseyes from here, because I've been training, or throw 20 darts from here to try to get that same number of bullseyes? I'm going to try to make work in this direction. It's better on my pocketbook as well, and in the long run, I think it's much better. So let's try to make that dartboard bigger. And don't worry about the phone.
Okay.
If you have questions, though, talk to your coaches.
Okay, but here's the thing, I guess if what you say is true, then it kind of doesn't matter anyway, because my oldest son, he's not that competitive, and when you get older, it gets so expensive anyway, so. It
does get expensive. I'm not going to be real. Participation in these programs is an investment, and I know that. I believe in, and my wife and I invested a lot for our kids to participate in the sport, because we know the incredible values and things that you learn through these sports. Life lessons that go well beyond the sport. This was worth the investment, but I don't want anybody in this room to make poor investments in your child's participating in sports. Your expenditures are in some big areas. Program fees, those are what they are. Make sure you take advantage of our scholarship programs. If you're not, if your kid really wants to go to those high levels, and it is stretching your pocketbook beyond a level that you're comfortable, even with the scholarships you've been awarded, talk to us. We want to take care of our locals. We want local kids to get to that level. It is going to be difficult, though. I mean, there are choices we have to make as families. Camps can be a really big one. We offer summer training for a lot of our programs on snow camps. Summer on snow training is the most expensive training that we do. Work with the coaches. We might be able to, skip some projects to make sure you go to the really important ones. I talked about competitions up there. We don't need to chase the competitions. Train well, be prepared for the important competitions when they matter most, and be okay with talking to the coaches, making some sacrifices. My son, who's a top-level athlete in alpine racing, did not go to all the races that his peers did. That wasn't an investment that made sense for us. We didn't have unlimited resources. That didn't slow him down in his development. Equipment is a really big one. That's one that you're probably facing right now as we come ahead. And the one thing that you don't want to sacrifice for all of our downhill skiing sports are boots. Boots are the most important piece of equipment that you're going to get. They need to be sized properly, and they need to be able to flex well. You cannot get boots that are too big. My time is up. You can't get boots that are too big that your kid will grow into. That's not an option for boots, because that is your connection to the snow, what they're doing. So make sure you do right on boots. Make sure you get new helmets. Do not buy used helmets. You don't know what the history of that other helmet are. Those are the two investments that you have to go full in on. Skis and snowboards, you can find good stuff used and save money there. Clothing, all those things, you can do that. But make sure boots and helmet, you take care of number one. And then travel costs are another substantial part. And yeah, it's important that you talk to your coaches, you understand what's the reason for this trip for my kid. We do have a few travel scholarships that will come up in the middle part of the year. the Carl's Cup Scholarship for kids who, maybe it's their first few competitions or an important qualifier event that they need help for. Make sure you apply for that. And then the Athletic Achievement Scholarship as well. So there's some ways we can help there. But
Okay, well,
did you have any other really important ones? Our time's up.
I think that you really convinced me. I'm so excited my kids are part of the club. And you guys got this. The coach knows best. They've got this from here. So I really don't have to be that much more engaged, right?
Well, our coaches are good, but they don't always know, they're not always perfect. And so I want one thing for you as parents to know with our coaches and our staff, that it's a partnership with you and the coach to help your kid be the best they can be. And I want to make sure that you feel that especially as your kids move up in levels and you're having to make these decisions about equipment, competition, all that. Coach might not know all of your situations as far as finances, as far as your emphasis on academics in school, which are important for all the kids, but some may make some more sacrifices there than others. Have that conversation. When we don't have good communication between parent and coach, some bad things can happen, like in this scenario where I look at maybe things aren't going well for our kid. And we're upset, we're giving them some criticism as parents. Coach is giving them some criticism because that's their job. Criticism, maybe it's feedback on how to be better. And our kids are kind of down and feel kind of stepped on. Whereas instead, our relationship with the coach, we're working together here, we have a communication, there's a plan. We can support our athletes. The athlete's always on top when I look at a parent-athlete-coach triangle. And the coach can apply some criticism to help our kid get better in terms of feedback and pushing them through that fear zone and those kinds of things. And as parents, we remember what our number one role is. It's a role none of us can do here at the club, none of our coaches can do, but remember your role is unconditional love and support. It's a role only you can play as parents. And if it's, if how you act and respond is tied to their results or things like that, we lose sight of our role as parents. It's the most important, is that unconditional love and support. So that's how we can work together as a team, Gene. But our coaches don't always have all of the answers or know all the details. So your communication with them is important. And I'll tell you right off the bat, some of our coaches aren't as great at communicators as others. They might be really good coaches and lousy communicators. You can work through that. The other thing with our coaches, however, is understand that we have full-time coaches who are spending 6-7 days a week, every day through the season in their coaching role, travel. It's a massive job. Many of our other coaches have other full-time jobs that they do, and then they come to coach in their free time, so they basically eliminate all their free time. They'll send you, they should send you when to get a hold of them and when's the best way for what's the best time for a phone call, how quickly they'll respond to an email, those kinds of things, and please respect that so you can have a good relationship with them. But if you're having a problem with that, you can talk to any one of us to try to help in that regard. It's a team approach. The club's in the middle. We're trying to play support here. You play an important role for your kids' development. The coach, of course, plays an important role in development. And then hopefully they own the journey, like Dave said. It's an athlete-centered approach that we're after here. So hopefully that helped with everybody and kind of understanding the philosophy behind the club, how we do things here. It's a unique thing. I think there's some real diverse experience in this room, just from where you're coming in with your kids' experience in the club. We've got some great experience amongst us, and we are here to be resources for you. But the fact that you're here today is fantastic. And if you think about, as a parent, how you can be better to support your kid and what they're doing here and that investment that you put forth, there are things that we can grow. You don't need to worry about knowing the technical parts of your kid's sport better. But knowledge is power. If you can understand how to better support your kid through communication, being prepared, understanding the rules of sport, understanding the equipment that's needed, having those discussions with their coaches, and just being curious about that, and then being mindful of things that Dave and Brian talked about. Long-term focus, not over-focused on results, but rather that process of learning and supporting those things. Then there's no reason your kid shouldn't have an amazing and really rewarding experience here with the club.
And John, I'll just add one more thing about time commitment at the club. I think as parents, we're really concerned about overscheduling our kids and having them have too much going on. And I'll tell you, as a parent of athletes that are a senior and a sophomore in college, I always say to them, if you want something done, ask a busy person. The busier they got in high school, they added more activities on, and they were able to do their sport at a high level and also do activities at school and other sports and have friends. And I feel like it was a more positive experience in high school, almost the less free time they had, especially in high school, because they had focused time. They came back to live trainings, so then I have only 2 hours to get work done, so I'm not going to sit on my phone for 3 hours. I got to get this done. And so it's been such a positive experience. So
Everybody should have, with each program, there should be orientation meetings. Some have already happened, some will be happening in the future that get more specific to how to look for your kid in the program that they are. But are there any questions from you all?
For any of us. Gene, do you have any other questions?
well, I have lots of other questions.
Did that bring up any additional questions for you? Anything more specific we can address?
I got one.
Yeah.
So with performance, I have personal experience as a ski racer, and performance wasn't always up to what I expected. And I think there was, in my past, there was lack of support around processing the performance, right? You don't always perform how you would expect. How does the club support the athletes in processing those experiences?
It's a good point, something we talk about with coaches. This was one slide, hard to get to, that just for our thinking as parents, because you might not know really what went wrong when those results go wrong, but the hard thing with results is all these things go into it. We've got snow conditions and weather, size and maturity, like that one slide I showed. Their equipment, maybe their wax was slow, training experience, they've been doing it for 2 years and they're competing against people that have been doing it for 10. The other athletes just performed really well on that day, even though our kid maybe performed well that day, but maybe the other ones performed even better. And then our own kids' performance. They can control this. They can't control this. They can't control this a little bit through the weight room they can. Equipment, maybe they just missed it, but they have limited control of their training experience. They are where they're at. Other athletes' performance, they can't control it all. So what we try to focus and talk to the coaches about, what you can think about as parents, is this is the only part really that we shouldn't worry about this. Focus on what did you do to do well? Did they eat a good breakfast that morning? Or did they skip breakfast? Or just get some donuts on the way out? Were they stressed because they hadn't studied for a test, but they know that it's coming, and so they're thinking about that instead of their competition? All those things. Those are things we see as parents that we could jump in with, but the coaches are mindful of where their heads are at and trying to help them with that. This is an area where, too, I think the door is open for you to talk to that coach and say, this is how Johnny's feeling at home with this. Can you help? And kind of do that. The coach and parent behind the scenes, the coach should have some tools to help you get with that. I've done that many times with our coaches for my kids. Hey, this is what I'm seeing at home. Can you help?
And I think with your experience, Dave spoke to it, is that, we are a junior development program through and through. We're preparing, our oldest athletes are still, if they're at a high level of performance, they're going on to a whole other level beyond this club. And so, Dave said in one of his slides, our performance is defined by the level of, the breadth of learning that each athlete is getting. I firmly believe, and I'm excited to work with colleagues that believe this too, that at the junior level, the athlete that's learning the most is going to perform at the highest level possible. And that's it, right? It's junior development and it's junior performance. Now, if they're at the Olympics or they're a professional athlete, that's a whole nother, that's a different game of performance. Like you don't perform, you don't get your sponsors. Like that's professional athletics. We are a junior development program, preparing many of our kids to reach that level. But it's about the learning process and then John's suggestions, right? Like, are we talking consistently with the coach and the parent about that? Are we helping our kids process the experience from a more holistic standpoint, like John's presented, right? Like, or are we just, get in the car, we drove all the way to Vail for you to take 15th place, and I spent $1,000 this weekend and you weren't even on the first page, right? Like, and whether we're saying that or whether we're acting that out, that is what the kid is hearing, no matter what we're saying. And if the conversation between you and the coach is, what are you going to do to get my kid to be on the front page, right? Like that, then we're lost.
To your point, that's what kills culture.
Yeah.
That's what kills the joy of the sport.
That's it.
Right?
So we got to be consistent with our approach here. And if you have a coach that is calling, this is what I'm going to do to get your kid on the front page, like that's not supported by our model here. Yeah.
It's a great question. And I think, a way to talk to your coach about this might be to say, hey, I went to this presentation from these people from our sports club. They talk all about how we should focus on learning versus performance, right? How are you doing this, right? And I think Joe then can say, these are the skills that your son is working on in practice that I'm looking for them to execute during that race, right? The warm-up, whole plan, pressuring the front of the boot, whatever those things are, then you're not just measuring the time during the run, the result, but you have two or three other things that you're like, these are things that are skill progression, learning oriented, that Joe's saying, hey, this is what we're focused on, right? This is what we're developing, we're looking to develop, and then you can reinforce that when you free ski or at home or in the drive home and say, hey, you might not have had the result you wanted, but I saw how you were executing that skill that you're working on in training. I saw how you were struggling to take that next step with that skill you've been working so hard on. That is the optimal conversation to have from my perspective. And you look at this, I'll use the sport of alpine ski racing as an example. You look at Bodie Miller, most people know who Bodie Miller is, right? And, he talked about, it's not really the result, it's not that result that I'm looking for. Did I ski the way that I can, right? Did I ski to my potential? Did I ski that course the way I want to? And from my perspective, that's not just by accident, that's why he's the best American ski racer of all time, right? And one of the greatest ski racers ever, because he had that learning mindset, and he held himself not to the result, but to that progression. We had a great presenter talking to our coaches last year, and at the elite level, he talked about how too many athletes are focused on that result and getting bummed or thinking about just the result. And he's like, what? This is just getting in the way of how good you could become. What about what you were working on in your training? Why don't you just give it up when you race? Always have those process goals, those skill goals for competition.
Dave, do you want to talk a little bit up here about how Luke supports our coaches and our athletes?
Yeah, and I'll plug it. So Luke Brosterhouse, he's our mindset performance coach. He has a background as a ski coach and as a PGA professional and a professional golfer. And he has his master's degree in sports psychology as well. And he's our mindset performance coach. So he works with all of our competitive programs at the U14 age and up, with the coaches and the athletes on these skills, right? On the specific skills to allow athletes to implement this in training and practice. So for any of you in those programs, you'll have, Luke just comes on, he's just in the winter, but he'll start in October and work through this. And Luke will also present in this series on the 15th of November at 6:30 here, and he'll give an awesome presentation, and it'll be an opportunity, for your kids to plug into that if they're in that program as they get older.
Does he work with the snowboard programs?
Yes, absolutely. David does a great job.
Back to this question, which is obviously very central to this conversation, and mental skills. Everything is a skill progression, so even meant, right, like Luke's work isn't to fix, ideally it's not a interventive method where we've messed these kids up and then they get to a high level of competition and now they need a sports psychologist, right? Like, that's not what we're trying to do. This is a skill just like any other, so positive, at the youngest ages, positive mindset, self-talk, imagery, the building blocks of good mental performance is really key over time. Simple stuff early, general, broad, but those skills are built so that when they're 14, 15, 16, and now stakes are higher, this question of I suck, I blew it today, right? They need to have the skills and the support to think about that differently, to have a different mindset, and that happens over time too. It's not just something that, okay, you're 16 now, let's go get the sports psychologist and work with Luke, and well, if we're undoing a poor skill progression mentally, then we got to do it that way with mental skills as well.
And I think I heard you guys on the slide say the introduction of those mental skills is a U14, this is step during U14.
Formally with our mental performance training, day one with 4 and 5-year-olds in terms of appropriate mindset. So I think ideally we're building the building blocks so that when they get to our formal mental training, which starts with Luke and the U14, he's working with kids and that have had parents and coaches that have done a lot of this up to that point.
Yeah.
This type of mindset, so that it's not, if Luke's working with a bunch of kids that have come up through a culture that it's like, you win that U12 race or you don't eat tonight, then he's gonna have a different project than you've laid a good foundation, and now we're gonna keep using those skills, but now at a level of competition, the stakes are higher, everybody's gotten faster or better. That's what we want over time. Question back there.
That's not really a question. I think, to your point, if you go back to one of your slides, I still have this harness. And the guy on the right was my son. I remember every cheeseburger, every ice cream, every pizza with him for 15 years. So, and I think that's half of it.
Yeah, can I elaborate on that? Just because specific to debriefing from a competition and how you learn from competition, and I'm Felix's coach, by the way. And these guys just moved from Vermont. But I'm glad you said what you said is part of those distractions that were just up on the presentation, that the one we can control is the performance itself. And this is a partnership that, the coach is going to debrief their side pretty quick. And this is for anyone, but one of those distractions throughout the day of competition could be the ride down. It could be the dinner table, right? How is that athlete thinking that ride home is going to go, depending on how they do or don't perform? How does that late conversation go? Or give them what they want to eat that night, right? Like read that body language. Because the ride home shouldn't be a distraction. That should be, to John's point, an unconditional supporting environment. I know I get to ride home with mom and or dad, and that's gonna make me feel good no matter how I did today. Not, God, that ride home's gonna suck.
And yeah, this is Ian on the podium.
Yeah, that's
So,
pizzas, the cheeseburgers, and the ice cream are just as important as the training.
and I was speaking more broadly, of course. Dave and John and Blair did a great job of, you're right, like specifying. But performance too is like, it's something we all, at a junior level, all our kids are performing just at various levels, right? And so That's a healthy culture of performance in a youth development environment is that we've spoken to it a number of different ways, right? Like there's kids that work at these sports over 10, 15 years of involvement here. What have they learned from that? What are their takeaways from that? That's the, and in the midst of that, we have kids performing at international levels and moving up to the next level. But performance is all of that, if it's based on a culture of sport and a culture of training. What I've seen a lot of in my career too is, why isn't my kid faster at the high level of specific performance? It's like, well, let's see. They've been at 50% of our training sessions. They don't have a healthy mindset. They haven't focused on the other things at the culture of sport and culture of training, but you want them to perform. That's, again, kind of the worst case scenario. But why didn't the club make my kid fast? Well, we were here doing all that, and the performance is different for different kids at different levels, various factors. But anyways, that's how we get there. Culture performance doesn't break off just to the podium at a certain age. It's all of this together. I know we're running along, so any other questions?
We'll stick around for a second if you.
Yeah, we're happy to chat.
I'll grab this one.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
This is recorded, so if you're like your next door neighbor, your kid's teammate, parents, and they're like, hey, you need this?
And also, next Wednesday, the 18th, John O'Sullivan presentation,